Hello, everyone. So this is going to be the continuation of the two-part lecture. The first part I had already uploaded before. So here we will be continuing with our discussion on morphological processes. So previously we already discussed the importance of learning morphology, learning the basic word structures, because in the study of the English language, it is also vital that we understand not only the syntax or the structural level, but also the word formation or word level. So here in this lecture, we will be discussing morphological processes. Now, around 1900 in New Berlin, Ohio, a department store worker named J. Murray Spangler invented a device called an electric suction paper. So, I don't know if you're familiar with the word spanglering, as people could have been spanglering their floors. No, for example, in this sentence, people could have been spanglering their floors. There is a specific meaning attached to the term or the word spanglering. So basically, in this sentence, the word spanglering is derived from the invention electric suction paper by J. Murray Spangler. So obviously, the process, including the electric suction paper, its term is or was based on the name J. Murray Spangler, who was the inventor of such an innovation. And then there came the word spanglered, which is the past tense form, as in the sentence, people might even have spanglered their rugs and curtains. So from this example alone, we can already identify how people could really create words or form words based on a specific source. The use could have been extended to a type of person who drone and on describe as Spanglerish, or the whole style of behavior is called Spanglerism. So basically, this was based on the name of Mr. Spangler. Mr. Spangler sold his new invention to a local businessman named William Hoover. However, Suction Sweeper Company produced the first ever machine called Hoover. The word Hoover became familiar as vacuum cleaner all over the world. So in fact, for example, in Britain, people talk about hoovering their carpets. So in this example alone, we can already see how words have formed over the years and how people have become very creative over the years as well in terms of creating new words, coining new terminologies. So even if other people never heard of Spangler before, it was not difficult for them to cope with the new words, no, such as Spangler, Spanglerish, Spanglerism, Spanglering, or Spanglered. It is an evidence that people can easily understand a new word in a language, or we call it as a neologism, and of course accept the use of different forms of that new word. Now, I'm not sure though if I mentioned this previously, but there's a big difference between protologism and neologism. Now, when you say protologism, it's a newly invented word, but it is not yet highly accepted or embraced by a certain group of people. On one hand, when we talk about neologism, it's a newly coined word and it's widely accepted by a number of individuals speaking the same language. So, for example, the term Spangler or Spanglered or Spanglerism, if it was widely accepted by a lot of people and could easily understood what such words mean, then it became an example of neologism. So this only shows that there's a lot of regularity in the word formation processes, especially in the English language. Now, one of the things that we need to understand when we talk about word formation processes or morphological processes is etymology. The study of the origin and history of a word, that is etymology, comes from the Greek etymon, which means original form, plus dohia, which means study of. Etymologies of less technical words, we soon discover that there are many different ways in which new words can enter the language. So we cannot only tell that a new word can enter a specific language through neologism or coinage. It could also be because of etymological formation, the formation of a certain word based on a certain language origin and then evolution as well throughout the years. So, when we talk about etymology or etymologia, no, etymon means true sense. As mentioned, it also is a process of a study, no, which is the study of true sense. No, when we talk about etymologia or etymology. So, as we can see on the screen, there is now this evolution of the word etymology. It all started with the term etymologia, which is a combination of etymon and logia. It was Greek in origin, and then it became an accepted word in the Latin language, which is now etymologia as one. And then it became an accepted word also in the Old French language when it became the term etymology. And then later on, when English language evolved, it became a noun, which is now the orthographical presentation, which is etymology, no? How we spell the word at the current time. So one of the word formation processes that we need to understand is coinage. This is actually one of the least common processes of word formation in English, according to Brown Yule in 2010. So when we talk about coinage, it means invention of totally new terms. Its most typical sources are invented trade names for commercial products. So basically, coinage originated, as a process um, when it comes to inventing trade names before, because they felt like there was a need to make use of terms that are commonly understood by parties, no, or individuals involved in trading or commercialization. So some examples are aspirin, nylon, Vaseline, and zipper. More recent examples are granola, Kleenex, Teflon, and Xerox. So as you can see here on the screen, some of these examples are very familiar to us, and these are not necessarily words by themselves, but these were taken from brands or specific names of products and then later on accepted by people as a term designated or tagged to a specific item available in the market. So coinage basically, or simply put, is the invention of totally new terms. Okay? Now, the most salient contemporary example for coinage is the word Google. So, if you have noticed, Google is actually a brand name, it's a trademark. However, the way we have used the term Google at current times is more on online search. So, for example, instead of saying you go over the internet and search for the term blah, 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 right? But now, people can simply say, just go online and Google it or Google the term, so on and so forth. So Google being a search engine is now used not only as a trademark or as a name for such a search engine, but also as a verb, no, a name for a process. So it's an action word now. So you can say, I Googled it. No, I have been Googling it. So there has now been a transformation in terms of how we are using the term. So it all started with a trademark, with a name for a brand, for commercialization purposes, for business purposes. And now people have widely accepted the word more of as a process that we can use as a verb or an action word in a sentence. So basically, we are the ones who assign the meaning, for the word Google. Next one, we have the word eponyms. Eponyms are new words based on the names of a person or a place. So examples of eponyms are the one I mentioned a while ago, Hoover, which is also which has become a verb, no, in terms of modern use. It originated from the name William Hoover, and then Spangler. no, from J.J. Spangler. We also have Sandwich from the Earl of Sandwich, first insisted on having his bread and meat together while gambling. And then we also have jeans, no, which is from the Italian city of Genoa, where the type of cloth was first made. So just imagine the history of these words, no? They were all taken from specific places, names of places, or names of individuals. Next one, we have the process rather borrowing, no? One of the most common sources of new words in English, according to Yule in 2010. So basically, borrowing involves taking over of words from other languages. So technically, it's more than just borrowing because English doesn't give them back. The process is we take these words from a specific language, but we don't give them back because they have been integrated already into the vocabulary, of the English language. So some examples of these are, the words croissant from French, dope from Dutch, lilac from Persian, piano from Italian, pretzel from German, sofa from Arabic, tattoo from Tahitian, tycoon from Japanese, yogurt from Turkish, and zebra from Bantu. No? Other languages borrow terms from English, as in the Japanese use of supa or supermarketo, no, for supermarket, and typewriter from typewriter. So we can see here how linguistic innovation, has been embedded already into the system of morphological processes. So from a certain word, we borrow, or from a certain language, we borrow a certain word and then incorporate it into our own languages or into the English language as if they were originally part, of such a language. Next one, we have the process called compounding. This combining process is very common in languages such as German and English, but much less common in languages as French and Spanish. So common English compounds, are the following. So we have compound nouns such as bookcase, wallpaper, textbook, doorknob. So as you can see, now obviously it's just like a combination of two different nouns or two different words. We can also have compound adjectives, such as good-looking, fast food restaurant, low-paid, full-time, as in the phrase a full-time job. The next morphological process is blending. Now, the combination of two separate forms to produce a single new term is also present, and that is the process of blending. However, blending is typically accomplished by taking only the beginning of one word and joining it to the end of the other word. Now, for example, we have the term brunch, which is a combination of two words, which are breakfast and lunch. So it's a large meal eaten at a time between breakfast and lunch, replacing the two meals with one instead. And then we also have the word cyborg, which is a combination of the words cybernetic and organism. So by definition, it's a hypothetical human being with physical abilities that are beyond a normal human because mechanical elements have been built into the body. And then I'm pretty sure you are familiar with the word emoticon, which is a combination of emotion and icon. It's a keyboard symbol used to represent facial expression. And then, no, I think we have already been using the word frenemy, which is a combination of words friend and enemy. A person who is a friend, even though there is an underlying dislike or rivalry in the relationship. So obviously, linguistic innovation, is still here, present in the English language through the process of blending. Next one is the process called clipping. This occurs when a word of more than one syllable, such as facsimile, is reduced to a shorter word, such as when we say fax instead of facsimile, usually beginning in casual speech. Examples, no, we have the word gasoline. So we cut it, we clip it, and then we simply say gas. We have the word advertisement. So in short, we say ad. We have the word brashier. No? Instead of saying this long word, we say the word bra. Condominium, no? Shortly, we say condo. And then we also have the process called hypocorism. Hypocorism is a particular type of reduction, which is favored in Australian and British English. A letter word is reduced to a single syllable, then Y or IE is added to the end. So here, I want you to understand that English has varieties. And these varieties collectively are what we call world Englishes. Now, ideally or typically, each country has its own variation or variant of English, which means that they speak or they use the English language in a totally general or in a totally different way, or in a totally different manner. In short, unique, no? That the use of the English language in that specific country is unique. So, as we can see here, hypocorism is usually existent in Australian and British variants of Englishes. So, when there is a long word, it's typically reduced to a single syllable only, and then it's affixed with Y or IE, no, at the end of the word. For example, instead of saying moving pictures, no, we say movie. Instead of saying television, we say telly. Instead of saying Australian, we say Aussie. Instead of saying breakfast, we say brekkie. So that is an example of hypocorism. So if there's no affixation of either Y or IE at the end, it's only clipping because we take off certain syllables of the word and then we use the clipped version. However, if there is clipping and then you attach Y or IE at the end, or you affix it with these morphemes, it's no longer considered a process of clipping, but of hypocorism. And then we also have the process called back formation. This is where a word of one type, usually a noun, is reduced to form a word of another type, which is usually a verb. Now, for example, instead of the use of the noun television, no, we come up with the verb televise. The use of the word donation, we come up with the word donate. And then we have emotion, no, we come up with the word emote. So that is an example of back formation. Now, one very regular source of back form verbs in English is based on a common pattern. Now, for example, when you say worker, its back formation is work. The assumption seems to have been that if there's a noun ending in er or something close in sound, then we can create a verb for the what that noun er does. For example, an editor will definitely edit, right? A sculptor will sculpt. So from the noun, we create a verb version out of it. So basically, if what the noun suggests, we just take off whatever affixation there will be, and then we come up with the verb. No? That is back formation. Because typically, we are used to having the verb first, and then we affix it so that we can come up with the noun. However, we have to take note that in the English language, there are certain words which are originally noun, no, by formation, but then we backform it by clipping off certain syllables or affixes, no, which are usually bound morphemes. And then we come up with the verbs, no, such as in the examples, editor to edit, sculptor to sculpt. And then we also have the process called conversion. It's a change in the function of a word, as for example, when a noun comes to be used as a verb without any reduction. So there's no reduction here happening at all. Other labels for these very common process are category change and functional shift. A number of nouns, no, such as bottle, butter, chair, and vacation, have come to be used through conversion as verbs. Now, for example, we bottled the home brew last night. So originally the word is bottle. However, in this sentence, no, there's no clipping, there's no reduction happening. However, we have conversed or we have converted rather the use or the function of the word from noun to verb. Say, we bottled the home brew last night, bottled to bottled. Have you buttered the toast? The butter as a noun, but then here we are using it as a verb. Someone has to chair the meeting. So chair here originally is a noun, but here it's used as a verb. They're vacationing in Florida. It's also the same when we say I have been Facebooking all day. So from the noun Facebook, and then it's used as a verb. No? The same goes with Google. So they have been Googling the word or the topic for hours now. So from noun, it's used as a verb in that case. That is the process of conversion. Now, the conversion process is particularly productive in modern English with new uses occurring frequently. The conversion can involve verbs becoming nouns, no? With a guest, must, and spy as the sources of a guest, a must, and a spy. So there are also phrasal verbs, no? For example, to print out, to take over, which also became nouns, no? Such as a printout, a takeover. One complex combination, for example, want to be or wanna be, has become a new noun, as in, he isn't in a group, he's just a wannabe. So I don't know if you have noticed it, but the original phrase is want to be, which is a verb phrase. However, it has now been converted into a noun, which is a wannabe, someone who wants to become another version of himself or herself. So we also have verbs such as see through or stand up, which we can now use as adjectives, as in see through dress or see through clothing, for example, or a stand up comedian. Adjectives as in a dirty floor, an empty room can become the verbs to dirty or to empty. So to dirty the floor or to empty the room. Other nouns are carpool, mastermind, microwave, and quarterback, which are all regularly used as verbs. So there are also other forms such as up and down, which can also become verbs, as in they're going to up the price of oil or she has to down that project proposal. So as you can see here, there has really been that there's really dynamics into the word formation processes. Basically, because when we check on the original version, it has changed not only in terms of form or not necessarily in terms of form, but also in terms of meaning or semantics. So the shift in terms of its function in a sentence is also very apparent. So this is one of the things that we need to take note as well, as one of the characteristics of the English language. It's dynamism. It can change over time. The functions can shift. Meanings or new meanings may emerge, depending on how we process words, on how we change words, on how we convert words. So in the process of conversion, some words can also shift substantially in meaning when they change category through conversion. For example, the verb to doctor often has a negative sense, but not normally associated with the source noun, a doctor. So for example, if I say, I would like to doctor this document, it means to fake the document. But it's not necessarily associated with the original meaning of the word, which is a doctor, a person responsible for healing or curing a person's disease. So in that case, there is now a misalignment in terms of meaning. However, morphological process of conversion tells us that language can become dynamic also in terms of its meaning shift or in terms of its function shift. And then I'm sure you're familiar with acronyms. No, acronyms are new words formed through the initial letters of a set of other words, such as CD as in compact disc or VCR as in video cassette recorder, where the pronunciation consists of saying each separate letter known as initialism. Now, we have to understand that if a word is read, for example, in this case, an acronymy, if it's read individually as letters, such as VCR or CD, we term it as initialism. However, if it can be read as one word, as a new word, it's typically called an acronym. For example, you say NATO, NASA, UNESCO, ASEAN, CHED, DepEd, if they're read as a word, like as if they are a new word and not read individually as capital letters, they are acronyms. No, otherwise, they are considered initialisms only. Now, many acronyms simply became everyday terms already, and we don't usually capitalize them anymore, each letter, such as laser. No? Originally, laser is an acronym for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Or radar, for example, which is an acronym for radio detecting and ranging. You just imagine how creative we have become in terms of these words, and the formation or the processes involved in these ways. Now, some new acronyms have also come into general use so quickly that many speakers do not think of their component meanings. No? For example, the innovations of the words ATM, where we say automatic teller machine. So we don't say automatic teller machine anymore. Instead, we say ATM as a brief version of the word. And then we also have the required PIN, which means personal identification number, which have been regularly used already with one of their elements repeated as in I sometimes forget my PIN number when I go to the ATM machine. It has now become a redundancy because we're no longer thinking of the meaning of the individual letters, no, in that acronymy. However, it highly depends on how we use the word in a sentence given, for example, certain, say, communicative situations. So if it's informal, definitely, no, it's okay to say PIN number or ATM machine. Like, nobody cares, no, if we commit mistakes when we say these words. However, the process of acronymy will remind us that N in PIN already means number, and M in ATM already means machine. Okay? And then we have the process called derivation. This is far the most common word no, formation process to be found in the production of New English. It's accomplished by means of a large number of small bits of the English language, which are not usually given separate listings in the dictionaries. These small bits are generally described as affixes. So that's what um, affixes, basically, or affixation as a process, is basically involved in the process called derivation. Now, some familiar examples are the elements, the common prefixes. We have un, mis, pre, and then the suffixes full, less, ish, ism, and ness, which appear in words like unhappy, misrepresent, prejudged, joyful, careless, boyish, terrorism, and sadness. So we have learned already what prefixes and suffixes, previously in our discussion. So prefixes are those words attached to the beginning of the word, while suffixes are those added at the end of the word. Now, all English words formed by this derivational process have either prefixes or suffixes or even both. Now, we call them circumfix. And sometimes we even have words where we insert a certain affix between and among syllables. So we call them infixes. Thus, mislead has a prefix. Disrespectful has both a prefix and a suffix. And then we also have foolishness, which has two suffixes added to it. So infix is the third type of affix, which is not normally used in English, but found in some other languages. So for example, in the Filipino language, it is an affix that is incorporated inside another word. It's possible to see the general principle at work in certain expressions, occasionally used in fortuitous or aggravating circumstances by emotionally aroused English speakers. For example, hallelujah. No? So here, as you can notice, the word bloody is actually infixed or attached in the middle of the word hallelujah. No? But it's actually considered rather offensive, culturally speaking. Infixes are relatively rare in English, but you can find them in the plural forms of some words. Now, for example, cupful, spoonful, and passerby, which can be pluralized as cupsful, spoonsful, and passersby. Now, using S as an infix inserted in the middle of the word. So, yeah, basically that's infixes. It's also possible that in English language, there could be multiple processes. Okay. So, for example, the term deli, which seems to have become a common American English expression via a process of first, we clip or we borrow it rather from the word delicatessen, which is German, and then the next morphological process is clipping. So originally, it's not from the English language, it's German. Now, by etymology, we borrowed it. So that's the first morphological process. Then followed by the second morphological process, which is clipping, when we say deli instead of saying delicatessen. Now, if someone says that problems with the project have snowballed, the final word can be analyzed, the word snowball, as an example of compounding, right? Snow and ball. And then, when it's combined, as a word snowball, we can then turn it into a verb through conversion. So, apparently, when we affix ed, it's now becoming a verb. So, in fact, in this word alone, there can already be three morphological processes, right? From the word snowballed. First, it's compounding, right? Combination of snow and ball. And then from snowball, which is a noun, to a verb, we now have the process called conversion. And then the moment that we add ed to it, it's now the process of affixation, which is part of the process of derivation. Now, many of these new words can have a very brief lifespan also, because of the multiple processes and the ever dynamic or ever changing English language. Okay? So I hope that this lecture has been very clear to everyone. No, and if you have any questions regarding this topic, especially with how morphological processes happen in the English language, no, please feel free to comment or send me a message. So I hope no you learned a thing or two from this brief discussion. Thank you very much.